Yeah. Oh, but you can hear me, can you? This has got, and we've lost Ed James. So this is basically going to be the Mike Craven show today. Let me try and work out how I can get myself back here. Interesting. Well, I hope everybody's there anyway. I'm going to swap cameras and try and bring it back.
Yeah.
Here I am. Hooray. Well, welcome everybody. Hello, Anna. Welcome to another 4 o'clock slot with the usual interesting drama. We are today waiting for the very great Ed James to join us. And Ed, of all the people who I know, is the most technologically proficient person. So for Ed to be struggling with this is part of the comedy of today's show. Here he is. Let's see what we've got of Ed. He's come to join us, but I'm not sure he is. This is the blue section on the right of your screen is the very talented Ed James. Ed, can you actually hear us? Well, there we go. This will be fun. Anyway, welcome, Mike. Mike, where am I speaking to you at?
Carlisle. In my
I've lost your sound now. Are you there?
I am, yeah.
Can anybody hear Mike? This is very good. Let me just check your audio. This is lovely and seamless, isn't it? Yeah, I've got your audio on. Oh, you can hear Mike. This is great because they can hear you and I can't. And we've lost Ed again.
This is going to be fun.
Right. I don't know quite how I'm going to do this then. I'm going to Ed's back. Let me. This is quite amusing. Now, who can hear who now?
I haven't spoken. I've just spoken again.
So they can hear you. Can we hear it? Can we hear Ed? This is great. I can't hear either of you anyway. I might have to try and duck out, but if I duck out, I think I might kill the studio. I'm going to try and go back and rejoin. So sit and look at the wonderful Mike Craven just for a second.
Can you hear me, Mike?
I can now, Ed, yes.
Cool. There you are.
No. Okay. Listen, yeah. I don't know quite what's it. I'm going to try and... Why? I can't hear. Let me just check on audio. This must be riveting for viewers here.
I know.
This must be absolutely fantastic. You can hear one of us. You can hear two of us. And only one of us can hear the other of us. And Ed can presumably hear both of us but can't speak. How?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I'm not sure where I go from here. Mike, I want to, if I ask you to say, at the moment, your latest book, The Puppet Show, was out last year.
Black Summer, actually, but yeah.
And it starts... no, actually, I want to talk about The Curator, which is out in June, actually, your next one. Because The Curator starts with... Oh, very good. Very good. Starts with a scene. I don't know if you can see here, I chopped a finger off as a very small child. So I have to say they use the word triggering to describe your first scene. If you could just tell us a bit like that, I'm going to disappear for a bit and try and reboot myself so I can hear you both. And I'm sure whatever you say is going to be fascinating.
Okay.
You can start swearing now, Mike.
Can you hear me? Can you, Ed?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah. I can.
Cool. Yes.
Well, I'll briefly talk about this, then I'll pass it over to you, Ed. The Curator, it's out on the 4th of June. It's the third in the Tilly and Poe series. It follows on roughly about 6 months from the events in Black Summer, and I suppose I mean, there's a nasty little scene at the start where someone has something appalling done to them, which all my books tend to start that way. And then we meet Poe and Tilly, and Tilly has dragged Poe to Steph Lynn's baby shower, and that's where it starts. Hiya, William.
Hello.
There you are. Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
I still can't hear anybody. This is terrible. All right, carry on. Just 1 minute. I might go and... Oh, that's not going to work. Okay, folks, I'm going to do something a bit radical. I apologize to everybody who's turned up here. I'm going to try and actually restart this broadcast completely. And that's going to mean it's going to crop up at a different place on my Facebook page. Or it might try in this one. But if you just sort of restart your pages in about 1 minute, we'll start again. Because this has not been great. Hey, I think we're actually live. We'll see if we have James. Sorry about that, Mike. Normally about this is much more professional. Let me just...
I can't hear you now, William.
You're joking. You're not. You're not joking. Oh, that's hilarious. Oh, God. That's fantastic. Now, I wonder why not. Let me go and try that once again. I'm going to fiddle with my settings. Oh, we've got some people coming back anyway. Let me just...
I can hear you again now.
Great. All right. Well, it's us two. And I think I've had a message from Ed. He's rebooting his computer to try and get to join us. So the gremlins are,
okay.
Here says, hard at work today. Welcome. Anyway, yeah, I'm talking about the Curator, your next book. And I'm sure what you're saying was fascinating. But third in the series... Did you have struggles doing the third in the series of the Tilly Poe and Tillian Poe series?
To be honest, I did. The puppet show, the first draft took me 25 days to get down. This one took 8 months.
Right.
And I didn't know where I was going with it for a while. It came together at the end. When I discovered the central sort of theme, but I was all over the place. I had clues that involved Egyptian hieroglyphics and all sorts to start with, and pyramids, and it was an absolute mess. I almost started again at one point, but I completely rebooted it, a bit like Ed's doing with his computer.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, and I like it. It's quite a cool story. If a bit, it's very dark at the end, but. And the next one after that, I wrote Poe 4 in about 3 months. I mean, it was done and dusted. It's already been copy edited and edited. It's just waiting to be typeset now. And that's not out for another 400 odd days.
Was that anything to do with the fact that you had such attention, Brady? I think the puppet show really got people's attention. And there was a kind of, you'd obviously done Black Summer by the time that was getting there. And you were then at the point at which you're winning the CWA Gold and stuff like that. Was that pressure to do the third one, or was that?
Well, the third book had already been submitted way in advance of the Dagger. Actually, the day after the Dagger was when I spoke to my agent about the changes, David Edley, about the changes he wanted to the fourth book. So, I think the problem I had was I'd enjoyed the process of Black Summer so much because I just started with the central premise of an impossible problem for Tilly really to solve. That I think I initially wanted to try and do something very similar, and then I think that's the sort of the trap I fall into, because I don't want to write the same book over and over again, the same characters, but obviously a different story. So when I got that sort of out of my system, it became a much easier book to write. And some scenes stayed in. A lot of them I just booted completely. One of them actually reappeared in Poe 5.
Right. So I should explain, because I've just asked you to launch into it. Am I panicking on this? I kind of, for those who don't know Mike Craven, he started a wonderful series with these two very, very different detectives. The older Washington Poe is a kind of really old school, embittered, been through the mill detective, and he's given it all up at the start of your series. But then he's pulled back in and he's teamed up with somebody or other, this Tilly Bradshaw, and they are the least compatible people in the world in many ways. But how did you dream up that twosome?
It was a complete accident, actually, William. There's two parts to this. My first series, which I had published with Caffeine Night, an independent publisher, had a cop quite similar to Poe. I mean, not identical, but with similar traits. And his opposite, his like sidekick, as it were, was an ex-para, extremely violent, aggressive, non-PC man. And when I was asked by David to write a new series, I wanted to move away from the Towler type character, so I went the other way to a sort of quite naive girl. But when I wrote the first draft, she wasn't quite the quirky character that she is now, and that's because I didn't have a name for Washington Poe at that point. When someone I was speaking to misheard me say Washington Post and said, "What's a Washington Poe?" Then I had my name, but I had to explain that name because you can't call somebody from Cumbria Washington. And when I got the backstory to why he was called that, he became a lot darker, and then I made Tilly a lot lighter, and they became this sort of odd couple. And you say that you say they're not compatible. They have completely different life experiences and skills, but they're both outcasts to a certain degree. So I think that's why they clung to each other at the start of the book, and the friendship's grown from there. And it's an absolute delight to write.
I think we can hear Ed now, can't we?
I can hear him.
I can hear something going on there. Hi, Ed.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
brilliant.
I can.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
I love the fact that this can't pretend to be anything other than three blokes fiddling around with their computers.
It's just as well, this is your first one, isn't it?
Yes, I've never done this before. And there's just a kind of weird panic that goes through your head at that point when you can't work out who. When it's two people not hearing each other, it gets very interesting. Anyway, welcome to everybody, and welcome to Ed James. I was cack-handedly introducing Mike there, Mike Craven, NW Craven, and now I shall cack-handedly interview you because all my cool has kind of evaporated now. Ed James, very prolific author, started self-publishing ebooks. Now he publishes in all sorts of formats, in pretty much any format there is. Multi-series writer, and really, you very tense, high-paced police procedurals, very compulsive kind of writing, very heavily plotted. So anybody who hasn't read him, you should definitely get hold of Ed James. I'm just reading Senseless right now.
Oh.
Actually. I'm loving it. From the I was describing the gruesome beginning of your book, Mike. Senseless, which is it's the start of a new series, isn't it?
Essentially, yeah. So this is the first book with headline. So it all depends on how well that goes, whether it's a new series. But certainly, I would like it to be a new series.
What would stop it from being a new series? Just you want to know it does well and whether it gets a.
Yeah, it's commercial because it's like the thing that you mentioned about self-publishing and stuff. If it's a book I self-publish myself, then I'm entirely in control. Whereas with a book where you'll have the same with Constable, where you're not in control of the future of it. So you have to sort of have the conversation with agents and editors about whether they want any more. So there's a sort of a separation between the commercial and the creative and stuff. So I definitely like to write more in the series. And I've got like about 3 or 4 ideas in a similar sort of vein because it's quite different from the sort of usual cops walking around talking to people. This one has got a criminal profiler, and so it's got a sort of slightly different angle to it. Even though it does have a lot of cops wandering around talking to people and lots of gruesome crimes and stuff like that. So.
Where are we talking to you from, Ed? Just explain where you are.
I'm in my office, which I'm probably the first person to be on one of your interviews. I haven't got a bookcase behind me.
I know it's absolutely. I'm kind of thinking of cutting you off now.
Yeah, well, there's my bookcase there. You can see.
Very good.
Yeah, and I had to get rid of all my books a few years ago because I lived in a tiny flat and loads of paperbacks and stuff, and I got rid of them all. And now I've just got like a Kindle and no books. So I've got like a load of copies of my books, and that's pretty much all the books.
I was trying to explain to people to you. First, I should say hello to everybody. There's loads of people come up there. So thanks for making it over. I know it's been a slightly eccentric start to it, but I was trying to explain to you. I think I sort of like, in some ways, sort of describing you as a kind of pioneer of new types of self-publishing. Would you like that description?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I suppose it kind of was that I wasn't one of the sort of the first. Like, there's people like in America, Amanda Hawking and John Locke and all those guys. They were golden age of it. So they got in the gold rush rather than golden age. They got in right at the start, and they basically just uploaded any old stuff and sold bucket loads. And then I was along the sort of the silver rush, so kind of after like Mark Edwards and Louis Voss and all those guys in this country did really well. I was in the second wave, like maybe James Oswald and people like that. And yeah, I think it's like almost 8 years to the day since my first self-published book, and it feels like, in a lot of ways, it feels like yesterday. In a lot of ways, it feels like 40 years ago. So it's a very strange world, and it's changed a hell of a lot since then. So I'm just kind of getting back into that sort of world now, and it's it's a lot more focus on having to advertise and pay to play than it used to be. Like, because Mike, you come from that background as well, don't you?
Myself?
What's that? Sorry,
Mike,
what's that?
Self-publishing.
No, I was with an independent publisher.
Right,
it was a proper publisher though, but so I didn't have all the hassle of doing all the typesetting and putting on the Kindle myself. But you're a lot more involved in the day-to-day sort of getting it together, sort of approving covers and having a lot more input. I don't get much input. In fact, to this day, I've not had a title that I have put forward being accepted. In fact, David says you're shit at titles. Just write the books, we'll come up with the titles.
I should say a couple of times is Mike's agent, David Headley, who's a very respected agent and bookseller. Sorry, I was just trying to be very like I was a proper interviewer there for a second.
Yeah. So the cover for Body Breaker, particularly. In fact, if you bear with us, I'll just go and get it.
While he's off doing it, I mean, I do think the rest of us who are conventionally published, really interesting. Let's have a look at that.
I said I wanted an angry hippie on the front, and they came up with someone. I mean, if you put that, it's not me.
Yeah.
But the amount of people who said so. I mean, that was the original version. It's been republished by Little Brown acquired the rights, and they republished it. So yeah, I've always quite fancied having to go to self-publishing actually, but the technical side of it scares me a lot. Although I'm the one who hasn't had problems today, it's only because I've got super fast broadband. I couldn't put a Kindle file together. I mean, I know I couldn't.
Well, you're in glorious 4K there, Mike. It has to be said. William, you did your.
I might want to watch me on a lower bandwidth.
William, last summer I helped you with that hip hop interview book that you did.
I did a book years and years ago, and you sort of realise any book you had published with a conventional publisher, like that long ago, and this was at 95. No, I can't remember what came in. No, can't remember. Yeah, 99 it came out. There was no electronic rights, so they're yours. So I thought I'd republish it again. And it was really interesting learning it, because I'm always really envious of those people. I think your generation of the self-publishing, you had to learn so much about publishing in the round. And the publishing industry tends to treat us, if you're conventionally published by one of the big people, you're treated in a weird way, you're kind of cosseted, and you're not really encouraged to think very hard about marketing, because that's their job. And that's a really sad loss, because we're all quite bright people given the chance.
Speak for yourself.
Thank you.
I find that basically self-publishing is involved making an arse of a lot of things and all the mistakes and then just learning from them. Whereas I think with trad publishing, you've kind of got that sort of 3-month window in which either make or break the book, and after that it's really hard to sell stuff unless you've sort of made it in the first 3 months. Whereas with self-publishing stuff, it's all digital, so there's like an infinite shelf life on it, and you've not got an inventory and stuff. So yeah, I've made all the mistakes, and the sort of looking back at all the crappy files I cobbled together in Word and stuff compared to the files I produced in an app called Vellum now for people like yourself, William, as well as my own books. Yeah, they look amazing, and you're just like it's all just done for free automatically. It's not a cheap app, but it's like, I get like a lot of value for it, and that hopefully the books look as good as the ones that trad publishers will output.
But it does mean you've been able to publish a huge amount of these novellas and novels and stuff like that. And I just think there's a real kind of muscle arrived in writing and like that. You've because it's producing for yourself, there's nobody to tell you not to publish, or certainly not if you're doing one of the ones for yourself, which means you've written a huge amount. I've been trying to calculate how many books you've written in the last 6 or 7 years, and I can't, to be honest.
Yeah, I struggle, and I use a sort of a service in India who write all the books for me, and I take all the credit. Not like it's, yeah. I mean, I get bored very easily, so I just like have to sort of sprint through it and then output and just get it to market. If I take a year, like sort of Lee Childery and Rankin or whatever did, I could not handle that because it's just such a sort of long period of time. I need that sort of constant pressure to really just batter me into sort of producing something. Or just having that constant pressure is what I thrive on. And any time I've had deadlines, I really just don't like it. So
I shall take a pause and say hello to a few people. There's Barry saying, I spy a romance shop. We get people coming back. There's some newcomers as well. Welcome to everybody who's come back. It's great to see you, Sergit. It's great to see you, Sven. It's great to see you, Sue Timea, Joy. And while we've got Caroline on there, I'd like to see if I can, hold on. This is, that's the drawing Caroline did of us yesterday. That's me, Liz and Leslie. I don't know if you can, which I seem to have little horns on there. But I quite like the fact that we can be drawn as we do this stuff, and people turn up. And if you can do drawings and add them in, I'll show them as well. So, in terms of the other advantages that you've had, Mike, is that you wrote these books that didn't necessarily do so well. You then had a really significant lot of attention with the puppet show, and you're republishing stuff, which is far more like, for Ed, that's easy. It's just there and he can do with a lot of, he owns a lot of his own stuff. But that must be great to breathe life into your old titles, which were written as Mike Craven rather than N.W. Craven.
Yeah, it sort of is. But I came up with a problem which came up with the creator, actually, because I had recycled an idea from the first Fluke book, a major plot point. I thought, well, no one's going to read this. It's forgotten. They're not. You can't get them anymore. So I'm just going to steal that idea, and I wrote it almost word for word. And because the creator it was one of the key scenes that I couldn't change it in the creator. So when they were republishing Born in a Burial Gown, I had to go back and completely write a part of it, which was a bit of a pain. And the solution I ended up putting in was to do with a left-handed guitar, and the way the strings are different. And because I don't play the guitar, I had put the string arrangement as I'd seen on the very first line on Google, which was one of those like WikiHow things, and it was absolutely wrong. It was completely wrong. So when the narrator was in the studio to do it, he's a musician on the side, he says, "You do realize you've got the bass strings on the top or the bottom, whichever way is wrong." I said, "Well, I've looked on Wikipedia." He said, "You're an idiot." We had like about 6 hours to get it changed. We got there in time. So the actual version that went to print is right, but all the beta versions of it were wrong. So it was, and the first series is out there and it's doing well. But it's sort of, because it was originally intended as a trilogy, it sort of ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. And there are no immediate plans to publish a third Fluke book because they want to concentrate on Poe, which is fair enough because that's what's bringing the money in. But at some point, I will have to finish that series. But it is nice, and they've got beautiful new covers and everything, and it was nice because I had 3 books out that year, which was good for everyone.
I don't know what you can see there, Ed. Can you see the comments coming along the bottom? Fergus McNeil says, "I have that same Boards of Canada T-shirt." Yeah. So obviously, top crime writers wear that T-shirt.
I suspect Fergus's one's a lot smaller than mine, though.
I saw a comment from Andy Hill before asking what punk band I'd have. I never saw the Clash, Andy. So if I could have a band playing my back garden, it would be the Clash, preferably with them all alive.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have an answer to that one there? Punk band you'd have in the back garden?
Well, punk band I would have, the Clash would be, or Joy Division technically punk? Would you say?
They get grouped in with
yeah.
Punk. Yeah. I mean, I never classed them as punk, but I mean, they were a good band.
Yeah, I don't really like the Clash's punk stuff. I have to say, I'm more into their sort of London Calling onwards when they're doing a bit more world music kind of stuff. So
I was more into the earlier stuff, as you could.
Yeah. White Riot and all that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy. I've lost control of this whole conversation already. Paul Pender says, does Ed now have to spend lots on Facebook and Amazon ads?
Yeah, so that's one of the things I've been doing since last summer, really, is I got into sort of well, last year I spent a lot of time writing books for Headline and Bookature, and didn't do much self-publishing stuff. And one of the problems with self-publishing is that you kind of income, because it's all just monthly royalties and stuff, it tends to just taper off over time unless you're releasing new product. So what I did was then started experimenting in Facebook ads primarily, and got quite a bit of joy from that. And then since the start of this year, I've been expanding heavily, and it's actually I think the income's gone up about 8 times in that. I'm spending quite a bit of money every day. It's about between 50 and 60 quid a day, but it's well worth that uplift.
Could you come and tell our publishers how to do this at some point? Because I mean, I do think it's just such a, I love my publishers in many ways, and they do all sorts of brilliant things, but it's so much of that world they regard as a mystery that's beyond their ken.
Yeah, well, there's also a side of it that what I've found is that the sort of the publisher the only publisher who's got your best interests, unless you're selling like Ian Rankin or Lee Child levels, is you. So if you're kind of lower down, then they'll have like 12, 15 authors each editor, and they'll have to prioritize them. Whereas if it's just yourself, self-publishing, then you're the only person, you're living or dying by your success. So, the things I've made a complete mess of, it's hilarious. But every time I've learned from it, it's like I've got, right, okay, I can do that. Whereas, I've seen stuff with other publishers where it's like, you can see that you can feel the tension. It's like the eye of Sauron scanning across, and you can see when it hits you, and you get like, hey, and then you're way off into the doldrums because they're not looking at you, and then it comes round again and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's just a case of like, I've the strategy. You got to develop a strategy, and I've had to do a lot of sort of data analysis, looking at what the sort of like the big guys in it. So LJ Ross, Mark Dawson, like kind of, and JD Kirk and a few others. Like, what are they doing? How are they achieving their success? And you can I've done the Mark Dawson's course, which was good up to a certain level. It's sort of very good at the sort of mechanics of how you do it. Less on the strategies. So there's a hell of a lot of books out there about that, and you can sort of look at what people are doing. So do you do box sets, pricing the first book low, making the first book free, kind of that side of things, and that's a lot of the experimentation along that. And then you can make a change and the sales go like that, or you can make a change and they go like that, and it's like, oh Christ, how do I get back to that? So it's all very interesting stuff, but it can be quite distracting from the writing as well.
Yeah, it's a different part of the brain, isn't it? Mills Pixie says your ads pop up all the time, Ed. I'm not sure whether that's a complaint or an endorsement. There's quite good conversations going on in the comments in which people are asking questions about the order of your books and when's the next one coming out there, Mike, and then it's being answered by Surjit or somewhere else. So that's quite handy. I don't know.
Yeah, I saw that Surjit says the Fluke book is coming out after Poe 8, which is news to me, Surjit, but I applaud your enthusiasm.
That's great. They know more than we do, anyway. When I was thinking, especially like, Mike, you're dealing with the whole point of your books is there's a serial killer sort of basis, and you have with your sort of real prolificness, Ed, have to sort of continually think of new ways to kill people. I had this comment from Susan Baines, who may have been in the audience before we lost things, but she said, having fun coming up with crime series caused by consuming crime fiction deaths caused by consuming disinfectant. She's actually knows those two classic things because she's one of those people who understands. Have you ever killed anybody using disinfectant? And if not, is this going to go in?
I'd certainly love to kill a certain American president with it, and I'm pretty sure he's probably going to try it because he's so stupid. But I tend to
probably counts as a death threat.
Yeah,
the Secret Service investigating you now.
Maybe the first time, won't be the last time. I tend to avoid poisoning and stuff. I just don't find it that interesting. I think I've done stuff with super strong ecstasy and stuff that looked like poisoning, and a couple of times, but I prefer sort of a more. I tend to have a lot of stabbings, particularly. I don't know why, just because it's a sort of a very British crime, isn't it? I've got to slot, yeah. But I don't, I know I spoke to, like, I think Neil White, I spoke to him about this a while ago, and he was really obsessed about crime scenes and all the interesting detail and how things happen and all that sort of stuff. And it's not really what drives my books. I tend to, like, focus more on the characters, and I think when people read police procedurals, the opinion I get is that they like having what my mum would say is a wee nosy in other people's lives. So it's more about the sort of the why, that, you know, what are the events that have led to someone having to take that person's life, and it's usually pushing them into a desperate situation. So you get more interest in psychology that way.
Yeah. How do you feel about that as well, Mike?
Well, my 5th book's about a poisonous, so ignore everything Ed's just said. It is. It's about a fellow called the botanist. He's a serial killer, and he warns victims that he's going to kill them. Whatever precautions they take, he manages to get to them. But I mean, Ed's right. I mean, the most successful series are very much character driven. I think that's the series that have sort of 2-dimensional characters don't tend to last the distance, which I think. I'm teaching you to suck eggs here. Obviously, you know that, and you're both right. Character-driven plots, anyway. Because I mean, I remember reading the Birdwatcher, William, and I was sort of blown away by that to a certain degree. Because
you can come back on, Mike.
Well, no, I mean it was it's such a sort of British habit, isn't it? A British sort of hobby to go bird watching, because the birds in the UK are not this spectacular birds that you get in the rest of the country. I mean, I when I was in the army, I was going abroad, and you'd see these massive, like 12-foot eagles. I mean, it looks like the eagles off Lord of the Rings. My wife has just come in with another can of beer, so she can come again as well. Thanks, Joe. But yes, but the birds in the UK are very beautiful, obviously, and I live in Cumbria, and I get to see quite a nice variety when I'm out with the dog in the morning. But you made such a beautiful story out of that, and it was a crime story, and you were introducing new characters at the same time. But
thank you very much.
It was very much a character study of one man. I'm not going to give anything away. It was something.
No, it's great, because I like I say, and I think it's really fascinating listening to you both, because I knew nothing about bird watching, and I think that's part of the fun. You have to actually then work out how you write these books about the worlds, because we all have to go into worlds we don't fully understand, don't we? And it's like the point at which you stop. I mean, a lot of it, research is a really dangerous thing, and I'm a firm believer is you shouldn't do too much. But on the other hand, then the story is the most important thing, isn't it? And then you work out what you need to know in a weird way. Yeah. It's quite difficult with bird watching, obviously. But do you agree, Ed, as well?
Yeah, well, one of the most interesting writing craft books I read was by David Morrell. I don't know how you say that. I presume that's the right pronunciation. He wrote First Blood, the inspiration for the first Rambo film, and subsequent terrible films. And one of the things, so he sort of went on about that, the write what you know thing, but that you can like sort of take that 2 ways. You can write about stuff that you already know, or you can learn about stuff. So I think one of the books he'd written, he wanted to get into photography. So he did a lot of research in photography, got into photography, and then wrote a book about it, having understood it. So, I do like to, there's a lot of the books I've done where it's about stuff I do know. So like banking industry and music industry. And I actually think it's probably the sort of the least loved ones from the point of view of, I haven't explained them enough, if that makes sense. So people are not kind of I've not helped people walk through the steps. There's some books like the Craig Hunter ones I've done, which are about an ex-squaddy who's now a cop, and all the research they did on PTSD and from soldiers and stuff. That was like really sort of interesting research, and a very different approach from my books, that I was sort of taking the character down that route and seeing where it led me. And the research was interesting in itself, I think.
John Paul says, Ed, could you talk about how you deal with your readers wanting more Cullen?
Well, there's
about his character that people relate to.
Yeah, so there's a Cullen novella out this year, but it's been about 2 years since the last Cullen book, and then there's 3 years before that, and that's just down to as much as anything, the sort of the sales of a series dwindle off. So when it gets to book 8, it sort of the sales are. I could like write something else that would make more money, and it comes down to that sort of level. But I've written 2 novellas this year, which are easier for me to produce, and actually that it took me. I actually fell out of love with that character quite a bit about 4 years ago, and I couldn't face writing it because I'd written like 7 in like 2.5 years or something. And getting back into the mindset of what, you know, of that character, and actually realizing that a lot of what his stories are just like slapstick comedy and stupidity, and then so making sure a cop is going to end up in a nappy at some point in the first novella that I did this year, that kind of thing. So just like focusing on what those books should be about, and then just like actually taking it to the nth degree and seeing how far I can push the audience with it.
Yeah, I mean, so I'd just like to say thank you I had a lot, because you set them off, Mike. I had a lot of nice comments from Mike and Barry and Caroline about Birdwatchers, so thank you very much. I managed to obliterate, I think, most of what Mike was talking about right at the beginning, because it was on the separate bit that I had to do about the curator, which is coming out theoretically coming out in June, is it?
June the 4th, yeah.
Yeah, is that still definitely a date?
Yeah, it hasn't been affected. The print run side, because the pre-orders have been so strong, they're going ahead with it. The only change is the cover finish is going to have 2 less products on it, which I don't even know what that means. Gloss or UV. I mean, it's all. I get these like emails off my editor with all this like all these acronyms in it and like jargon, and I've got no idea what she's talking about most of the time. And there's only so many times. Can you just explain what that means? And so yeah, it's out June the 4th. And I know Sergio's just asked about the short stories. So that was the exclusive thing I was going to reveal today. So there's a short story collection coming out this year as well. September, I think. They're still sorting out the details, but and there's also a little surprise coming, which we'll be announcing next week, which I'm going to keep for the UK Crime Book Club, if you don't mind, William.
Oh, you heard some of it here first, but you know.
Yeah, well, no, the short stories, the collection's going to be called Cut Short. It's just three short stories. And I hadn't written a short story since 2013, I would say. But then my editor rang me up and said, there's a BBC competition. Have you got any short stories that we can send off for it? And I didn't. I said, look, when does it close? And she said, Sunday the such and such. And it was like Friday the such and such. So I said, right, I'll give it a go. I'll try and write one in a day and a half. And I did, and it was fun. So I've been writing short stories ever since. I couldn't stop all these like silly ideas you have for a book which can't sustain a full novel or even a novella.
Yeah.
But they can sustain maybe a 6,000 word short story. So I've been pumping through them, and I'm nearly finished the 4th one. And it's been fun. It's been enjoyable, and they're a bit more lighthearted than the Poe books. And well, you'll know yourself from writing short stories. You need to keep an idea simple. It's basically one theme, and you don't necessarily have to have a complete ending like you do with novels and things. So it's good fun. It's good fun. But yeah. They're out in September, I think.
I can't write short stories. I think they're way too clever.
It's a completely different skill. I mean, you have to get out. You're not. I've had to put Poe 5 down for a bit, so I haven't touched that for about 4 or 5 weeks. It's just sitting there waiting for me, all these like clever ideas. And I've also started stealing funny lines that were going to go in Poe 5. I thought if I needed just a little quip, a little bit of dialogue with Tilly. So there's a bit in Poe 5 where Poe drops his toast and it lands butter side down, and he says, "Typical the look I'm having," until he explains the maths why toast invariably falls butter side down, because it is physics and maths. So that's now in a short story instead. So I'm going to have to think of some another way for Tilly to annoy Poe in the novel.
Mike mentioned UK Crime Book Club, which is a Facebook group, and they're having an online festival. It's yet another thing. A lot of what I've been trying to talk about on this is how we're doing things slightly differently because we're all at home a lot more, which for writers isn't generally not much of a stretch, but all sorts of people are having to do all things. And there's a great online crime festival coming up from them. So if you search for UK Crime Book Club on Facebook, you'll come up with the dates of their festival around the what we used to call May Day, bank holiday, but it's not that this year, is it? Anyway, so what are you working on at the moment, Ed?
I just literally finished the first draft of the second Vicky Dodds book. So I published the first one in 2015, a long time ago, and that was with Amazon's Thomas and Mercer imprint, and then that did quite well, but I accidentally wrote the first Fenchurch book, got a deal for that. So it was a deal for 2 Fenchurch and the second Dodds one, and then the Fenchurch ones did so well that they wanted to swap it out, and it never really kind of came round to having another deal for poor old Vicky Dodds. So eventually my agent managed to get the rights back to that book. I edited it, and I thought it would just be like a little tweak here and there, and ended up rewriting it, and it's now republished as Tooth and Claw, whereas before it was Snared, and it's vastly different. And then I wrote an outline for it, and then just got so flat out that I never had time to do it, and now I find I've got tons and tons and tons of time, so I'm writing that one. So I've just finished the first draft of that, and it's messy, but it's done. So it just needs a bit of editing, and then I'll hopefully get out sometime this summer, I think.
Well, I generally try and make these half an hour, and there's so many things I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask Mike about reading in the army, because I read you read somewhere this interview where you talk about how the army are really compulsive readers, which makes perfect sense for your lifestyle. And I think I might have to ask you back on another sort of thing, because I just think that's really interesting, how that kind of stuff. Also, I've read so many interesting descriptions from you about how you write and your method, Ed, and these sort of very strategic kind of way in which you plot a book and work it out, which would terrify it. Just really terrifies me, because I just start with a paragraph and shamble along in a sort of way, and I actually think I've got to learn how to do this differently now. But I think we're going to have to save those for a different time, because I think after about 35 minutes, people have had quite enough of us. But thank you so much, both of you, for spending some time rushing around Facebook trying to find me and trying to work out how we could actually hear each other. It's been a real pleasure. And I hope you have a smashing weekend, if we know what a weekend is anymore.
If such a thing still exists. So thanks for having us.
Pleasure. All right. I'll press the off button, and thank you so much.
Cool.
Cheers, William.
Cheers.